Okay students, so in this video we are doing the first chapter of Science 1, that is gravitation. So I have divided this video into two parts because it's a very long chapter and there are a lot of numericals also in this chapter. So in the first part we are going to cover these many topics. So before we start gravitation, the first question that they can ask you, और जो पहली चीज़ जो हमें समझनी है, what is centripetal force? So when you are writing an answer on centripetal force, you have to remember the following points and you have to write an answer based on that. So पहला point है, when an object is moving in a circular path. So when there is an object and it is having a circular motion, when an object is going in a circular motion, so there is always a force that is directed towards the center. So to that object, suppose this is an object, so this object is moving in a circular path, so there is a force which is acting towards the center, which is pulling that object towards the center. That force is known as centripetal force. So you can also write centripetal force is center seeking force. It is center seeking force, which means it is directed towards the center, it is always going towards the center, it always tries to push the object towards the center. So these are the three important points that you can write and you can make an answer, you can elaborate on that. So centripetal, if definition is asked, you can say that centripetal is a center seeking force which acts towards the center. Okay, so you can write the definition, you can write an answer based on that and you can give an answer. So centripetal force is the famous question that examiners like to ask for gravitation chapter. Okay, so now to understand gravitation, you have understood what is centripetal force. Centripetal force वो होती है जो center की तरफ act करती है. So we have a lot of planets, we have a lot of satellites, all are moving in a circular motion, all are moving in a circular path. So all these planets, all these satellites, they are acted upon by a force which is centripetal force. So 16th century में there were a lot of scientists, they were trying to study about all these planets, all this satellites, and they were trying to understand कि इनका motion कैसे होता है. So now we come on to the next point about Kepler's law. So in the 16th century, Kepler was one of the scientists who discovered all these planetary objects and he tried to make laws. So Kepler gave us three laws. So we have to understand the three laws of Kepler. This is also a very important question in the examination. So Kepler ने हमें तीन law दिए थे. So three laws of Kepler, what are they? So the first law, what did Kepler observed and what Kepler said was, the orbit of a planet is an ellipse with sun at one of the foci. So the first law is also called as law of orbits. इसे हम law of orbits भी कहते हैं. तो law of orbits क्या कहता है? The orbit of a planet, orbit जिसमें planet revolve करता है sun के around, the orbit of a planet is not circular, it is an ellipse. This is an ellipse. Okay, so the orbit of a planet is not circular but it is an ellipse with sun at one of its foci. अभी ellipse में क्या होता है? Center होता नहीं है. Like in a circle we have a center, but in ellipse we have two foci, f1 and f2. So I can choose any foci, so I am choosing this foci. So sun will be at any one of its foci and the orbit is going to be elliptical. So this is known as law of orbit. I will repeat myself. What did Kepler say in its first law? Kepler ने अपने पहले law में बोला, the orbit of a planet is an ellipse with sun at one of its foci. So this is my sun and sun is at one of the foci. Okay, moving on, the second law of Kepler. So again in second law, what did Kepler said was, the line joining the planet and the sun sweep equal areas in equal interval of time. The line joining the planets and the sun. Suppose now my planet is at position A and then it is moving at position B. So this is the two position and this is the line joining from the sun. So this is making an area. Suppose this is C and this is D. Again this is making an area of triangle. So what did Kepler say? All these areas are equal. So I'll repeat myself. The line joining the planets and the sun sweeps, the word here is sweeps. Sweeps matlab the area that they are covering. So the line joining the planet and the sun sweep equal areas in equal interval of time. So as the planet moves, the area that is covered will be equal to when the planets move here. Okay, so I'll repeat myself. Remember this law: the line joining the planets and the sun sweep equal areas in equal interval of time. Okay, so these are the two laws, and the final law that Kepler gave us, there is no diagram for that, it's very simple, it can be understood by just writing this thing. Okay, I'm going to explain you what it is. So what did Kepler say? Kepler's third law is that the square of the period of revolution is directly proportional to cube of the mean distance of the planet from the sun. Now t is period of revolution, the time period. The t is the period of revolution. So what did Kepler said was, the square of the period of revolution, this is proportionality sign, it is directly proportional to cube of the mean distance, r is the distance of the planet from the sun. तो sun से जो planet है उसके बीच में distance होएगा और एक time period होएगा motion का. So the time period square, it is directly proportional to cube of the mean distance. Mean distance why? Because apogee and perigee, so यहाँ पे distance ज़्यादा है, यहाँ पे distance कम है, so mean distance and average distance. Okay, so I'm going to repeat myself and I'm going to explain you all the three law. You can easily understand by making this diagram. First law, law of orbit. The orbit of a planet is an ellipse with sun at one of the foci. Second law, the line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal areas in equal interval of time. And the third law, the square of the period of revolution is directly proportional to cube of the mean distance of the planet from the sun. Okay, so now moving on, after Kepler, it was Newton who gave the law for the gravitation. So Newton was a person in the later century, in the 16th century, in 1630s. So Newton studied about all the objects and how the planets are revolving. So Newton said that two objects are attracted to each other. So Newton was adamant about finding what kind of attraction is there, what kind of force is involved. So Newton gave its Newton's law of gravitation. Again, this is very important from the exam perspective. So आपको न्यूटन का लॉ लिखना है तो आपको सिर्फ एक ये चीज याद रखनी है. अगेन you just have to remember this and you have to say it in words, because Newton found out the force that is acting between the two objects. जब दो objects आपस में एक दूसरे को attract करते हैं, so what kind of force is between them, Newton found it out. So what is Newton's law of gravitation? So Newton's law of gravitation, Newton stated that every object attracts every other object with a force which is directly proportional to the product of their masses, and it is inversely proportional to square of the distance between them. So Newton said that हर ऑब्जेक्ट दूसरे ऑब्जेक्ट को अट्रैक्ट करता है, एक फोर्स है, वो फोर्स जो डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनल है उन दोनों के masses के प्रोडक्ट की, प्रोडक्ट मीन्स मल्टीप्लिकेशन, प्रोडक्ट ऑफ द masses, and it is inversely proportional to square of the distance between them. Okay, so in mathematics, if we remove proportionality, we have to add a constant, and in this case the constant is capital G. Capital G is also called as gravitational constant. So this equation will become G m1 m2 upon d square. So this equation will become this. And now regarding the value of G, so all the scientists have mathematically calculated experimentally and they got the value of G, and the value of G is 6.67 into 10 raised to minus 11. This is the value of G. You have to remember the value of G. This value you have to by heart it. This value is very important. And regarding the units, अगर units की बात करें, G की अगर unit निकालना है, so G will remain here. What will happen? This d square will go there. So what is the unit for force? The unit for force is Newton. And what is the unit for distance? It's meter square. So ये इधर चला जाएगा तो दोनों multiply हो जाएंगे. Now m1 m2 will come down. So mass is measured in kilograms. So there are two masses. So this will be kilogram square. So the unit of G is Newton meter square divided by kilogram square. I'll write it here. Newton meter square upon kilogram square. So that is the unit of G and the value of G. So this, if Newton law का question आता, so you have to explain this law that every object attract every other object with a force which is directly proportional, and then you have to write this, and then you have to explain what is G, and then you have to give the value of G. If you explain all this, you are going to get full marks for Newton's law of gravitation. Okay, moving on. After Newton's law of gravitation, there is a difference between a capital G and a small g. Just now I explained you about capital G. Capital G एक gravitational constant है जिसकी वैल्यू होती है 6.67 into 10⁻⁻11. Now this G is our acceleration due to gravity which we feel on this earth. जो हम लोग इस planet में experience करते हैं, this small g is that acceleration due to gravity. So now we are going to calculate the value of G. हमारे planet में G की वैल्यू क्या है? तो G की वैल्यू कैलकुलेट करने के लिए this question is also very important question. It has also come in a lot of time. So G की वैल्यू कैसे कैलकुलेट करते हैं? So first we have to use our previous equation that we have just calculated. F is equal to G m1 m2 upon d square. अभी हम इसमें थोड़ा वेरिएशन करेंगे because now we are calculating the value of G and we are calculating this value of G for our planet Earth. तो अर्थ के लिए हम लोग कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं, तो अर्थ में हम लोग अर्थ का मास m1 विल बी मास ऑफ द अर्थ m लेंगे और रेडियस ऑफ द अर्थ वी विल टेक इट एज कैपिटल R. So we know the two values. So what we are going to do is we are going to modify this formula that we have previously used. So m1 को हम लोग एक कैपिटल M ले लेंगे because this is the mass of the earth, and d square को I am going to write R square, radius square. It is the same formula, Newton's formula, but we have just little bit modified it according to the value of G for the planet earth. Okay, तो मूविंग ऑन. लेकिन हम लोग को फोर्स का एक और फॉर्मूला पता है जो हम लोग को 9th स्टैंडर्ड में सिखाया गया था. व्हाट इज द फॉर्मूला फॉर फोर्स? मास इनटू एक्सेलरेशन. यस, इन द 9th स्टैंडर्ड वी हैव लर्न दिस फॉर्मूला. बट अगर हम लोग अभी इसमें हम लोग जी की वैल्यू कैलकुलेट करना चाहते हैं, सो वी विल रिमूव दिस एक्सेलरेशन एंड वी विल यूज अवर एक्सेलरेशन ड्यू टू ग्रेविटी. तो दोनों फॉर्मूला को हम लोग को थोड़ा सा मॉडिफाई करना है. आई होप इट्स सिंपल एंड अंडरस्टैंडेबल. सो वी हैव अवर टू इक्वेशंस. वी हैव अवर इक्वेशन नंबर 1, we have our equation number 2. So before starting the answer you can explain what those two equation are and then you can move on to the derivation. तो हम लोग derivation में क्या करेंगे? Comparing equation 1 and 2. So we are going to compare our equation 1 and 2. So दोनों में force common है, the force are going to get cancelled and we will have mg is equal to g m m2 upon r square. Okay. Now in this also this mg is nothing but, in this mg it is nothing but mass of the object. So this is the mass of the object and this is the mass of the earth. So mass of the object can get cancelled here. So what I'll have is g is equal to gm upon r square. So my value of g can be easily calculated now by putting all these values. तो g की वैल्यू हमने सीखी थी. So it was 6.67 into 10⁻⁻11 multiply by m. Now m here is mass of the planet earth and mass of the planet earth is 6 into 10⁻24 kilograms. Okay, so now we are going to divide it by the radius of the planet earth and the radius of the planet earth is 6.4 into 10⁻6 the whole square. Okay, so we have this equation, we have put the values in that equation. आपको ये दोनों वैल्यू याद रखनी पड़ेगी, radius of the planet and mass of the earth. And if we solve this, I get my answer is 9.77 meter per second square. Since it is acceleration, it is in meter per second square. तो acceleration due to gravity जो small g है उसकी वैल्यू है 9.77 meter per second square on the planet earth. So we feel the value of g on the planet earth, the acceleration due to gravity is 9.77 meter per second square. So you can pause the video there and you can write this derivation, it's very important, or you can see it in your textbook page number 8. You can get the derivation and you have to write it down, it's very important. Now moving on, last two topics. Now variation in the value of g. Variations in the value of g. Variations का मतलब होता है changes. So जो 9.77 meter per second square value है g की, it is not same, it is changing. So we have to study three kinds of variation. The first kind of variation is along the surface of the planet earth. Along the surface of the planet earth means हमारे earth में भी g की value constant नहीं है because earth is rotating. Earth is rotating. So because of rotating, Earth is also not a perfect sphere. Earth is bulging at the equator and it is flat at the poles. So Earth poles की तरफ flat है और equator की तरफ Earth थोड़ा bulge करती है. Bulge means it is little bit fat on the equator side and flatter on the pole side. So what happens because of this is the radius towards the equator is more as compared to poles. तो poles का radius shorter है और equator का radius slightly greater है. So if you remember the formula for G, what was the formula for G? Gm upon r square. So G is dependent on constant, mass of the planet Earth and radius. तो रेडियस नीचे है मतलब रेडियस इन्वर्सली प्रोपोर्शनल है. सो इफ रेडियस इज ग्रेटर जी विल बी स्मॉलर. सो रेडियस इज ग्रेटर. सो इक्वेटर में ग्रेविटी इज स्मॉलर. सो इन द इक्वेटर द ग्रेविटी इज 9.78 and at the poles gravity is greater which is 9.832. Okay, so at the poles the value of G is greater 9.832 and at the equator the value of G is smaller, small g, because the radius is greater at the equator. Okay, so you have to give this explanation. I hope you understood. If you have any doubts you can ask me this part later on. Now moving on along with height. Height is also very simple. Suppose this is the surface of the earth and this is the mountain. So if you are climbing on this mountain and you are standing on this mountain, so what will happen? Now radius यहाँ पर इतना ही है, but as you have climbed to a certain height, so you have a more radius. So again r की value increase हो गई because you are standing at a region which is greater than the value of r. So r की value बढ़ गई by this h, it became r plus h where you are standing. So if this increase, the value of G is going to decrease. So along with the height, the value of gravity decreases. So as higher you go, the value of G decreases along with height. So you can explain with this diagram also if you like, and you can explain this, that as the height increases, the value of G decreases. And the final scenario is with depth. What happens as you go inside the earth? So now I'll draw it here. Suppose now you are standing inside the earth. Now you are going inside the earth. So if you have gone inside the earth, you are mining it and you are digging inside the earth. तो टेक्नोलॉजिकली जो हमने दोनों कंसेप्ट केस में लॉजिक लगाया था कि इफ आर इज इंक्रीजिंग डी इज डिक्रीजिंग, नाउ आर इज डिक्रीजिंग, तो टेक्निकली जी इंक्रीज होना चाहिए. बट नो, इट डजंट हैपन लाइक दिस बिकॉज एज यू गोइंग डाउन द मास ऑफ द अर्थ इज ऑल्सो डिक्रीजिंग. इतना सारा मास जो ऊपर का है वो काउंट में नहीं आएगा. सो मास इज ऑल्सो डिक्रीजिंग. सो एज वी गो डाउन the gravity again decreases. So in all the three scenarios it's decreasing. Surface में equator की तरफ decrease होती है, height में as we go height decreases, and depth also as you go inside the earth the value of G decreases. So these are the three scenarios. Variation, it can come as a give reason, so you have to explain how the value of G changes. And remember, always the value of small g changes. The capital G can never change because it is a gravitational constant and constants never change. Now the last topic that I would like to cover here is distinguish between mass and weight. This is also a very important question which has come in the examination lot of time. So दोनों में फ़र्क क्या है mass और weight में? Okay, so there is a huge difference in mass and weight because mass is just the actual mass that the body has. The actual mass that a body has is known as mass, and on the other hand weight is the force which is felt by the body. So weight is a force. So weight is mass into acceleration due to gravity. Weight is mg and mass is just the m. Mass is not multiplied by force. So mass is measured in terms of kilogram and weight is measured in terms of Newton, because mass into gravity is nothing but a force and that force is measured in terms of Newton. So that is why mass is a scalar quantity, क्योंकि mass में सिर्फ magnitude है, सिर्फ value है, mass में direction नहीं है. Now since here we have G, G is acceleration due to gravity. G के पास direction होता है. If it is coming towards the earth, it is going to be negative. It's going away. So G की value होती है positive, negative. So that is why weight is a vector quantity. Okay, and weight can change. Because if G becomes 0, if you go into the space, the value of G becomes 0, so you will feel weightlessness. तुम्हारा weight 0 हो जाएगा, mass 0 नहीं होगा. Mass is always constant, mass can never change. Mass is whatever you have inside. Mass is constant, mass can never change, but weight can change. Weight can become 0 if this g becomes 0. So these are the 4 distinguishing features that you can write. So you can write them in the point wise and you can remember them. So these are the important topics that I have covered. In the next video I am going to cover the remaining chapters, remaining topics, and we are going to do numericals based on that. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comment section or you can send me a personal message. Thank you so much.